Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nicolas, for the opportunity to moderate this panel discussion. My name is Stavros Pantzaris, and I'm the country managing partner of EY in Cyprus. Let me first thank the Honorable Minister for a very thorough and insightful presentation. It seems that the next few months and years will be quite active in terms of offshore drilling within the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus, and do lead to the development of the island into an energy, maritime, and logistics hub. Of course, all these points will be discussed in the upcoming session. However, let me first present a very short video which highlights some additional points and thought-provoking questions related to the energy, to the future of energy. Let us play the video, please. What the energy mix will be like in 20 years from now. Are today's energy companies prepared for tomorrow? How can we innovate, accelerate innovation in the energy sources? Will the oil age come to an end? Well, this is definitely food for thought and further consideration by the energy market players in the world. At this point, let me introduce to you our panelists, which include distinguished guests from well-known energy groups. On the panel, we have Mr. Ed Cox, Director of Noble Energy, a US-listed company being one of the major partners in the Aphrodite gas field. Mr. Yaniv Friedman, Deputy CEO of Delek Drilling, an Israeli energy group with active participation in both the Leviathan basin as well as the Aphrodite gas field. And Varnavas Theodossiou, lead country manager of the US energy giant ExxonMobil. So let me start with Varnavas. Varnavas, what are the drivers for ExxonMobil to turn its interest to Cyprus and the Eastern Mediterranean?
Well, thank you, Stavros. It's interesting you mentioned that that video tries to predict the future. I will try to predict the future as well in trying to answer that question, actually, because I want to start with our global energy outlook, which tries to predict the future between now and 2040, 22, 23 years down the road. And we start with the prediction of the population growth. We believe that population global population will increase by about 25% to reach 9.2 billion by 2040. And that will require an increase in energy demand. And we predict the energy demand will increase by the same amount, about 25%. There would be some efficiencies in terms of technology, but some countries out there will increase their standard of living. So all in all, about 25% we predict that would be the increase in demand. And today, 25% is consumed by North and South America together, just to give you, a sign on what the energy demand will increase like. So we see natural gas displacing coal as the second largest fuel in the future. And natural gas has much lower carbon footprint than coal, more environmental friendly. So 40% increase is our estimate of the increase in natural gas between now and 2040. Europe imports more than 50% of its needs in natural gas, either in energy form or piped. And we expect that to increase because Europe production will be declining. The fields are declining, and there are new environmental legislation which causes decline in European production. So increase in imports for the future. At the same time, Asia would be fueled by additional growth, and that would be fueled actually by additional natural gas imports. So if you put that in a matrix, we see Cyprus and the East Med very well positioned to meet part of the additional demand that will come from Europe and potentially Asia.
Thank you, Varnavas. Ed, one of the country's priorities is to proceed with the monetization of the Aphrodite gas field. Is this in line with Noble's priorities?
I'm sorry. Say again?
Yeah, one of the priorities in Cyprus as a country is to proceed with the monetization of the Aphrodite gas field.
Yeah, so we are on the easy end of this from a technical point of view. That is finding it and drilling it up. Monetizing of it, though, if you can, you can find it and you can drill it up. The monetizing of it, particularly of gas, and the problem of stranded gas, of which there's a lot in the world, is a major issue. Yep. And that is one particularly that gas off Cyprus. It's going to be, it's going to take some imagination to solve it, and a lot of political will to solve it, not just with respect to Cyprus, but also with respect to surrounding countries, because you get involved in the geopolitics, as the energy minister pointed out at the start, but even in a broader sense that the Russians would like to monopolize the European gas market, and Cyprus would be a game changer in that. You would need either LNG, which is a pretty obvious market at the moment, because there are two dead LNG plants that were built a long while back. I think ENI has one of them, it's an interest in one of them. And with the amount of gas now that's becoming available through Noble and Delek's efforts, and with the development of the Aphrodite field, that gas will be available to go directly to the pipeline that you were discussing, or that the minister was discussing, would go directly to those LNG plants. But after that, regional markets, which may be limited, we'll have to see how they develop, and that means pipelines going to Turkey, and or perhaps converting the gas to electricity and shipping it by cable to an energy-hungry Europe. All those things are alternatives, and all of them get involved in geopolitics and also huge technical issues.
Thank you, Ed. Moving now to Mr. Yaniv Friedman. Yaniv, what do you consider as being the biggest challenges and risks faced currently by the oil and gas companies operating in the East Med region?
We have to start with the risk question. There's some, optimism as well, and things that are moving great forward. I think that, both the minister and Ed mentioned, mentioned, we in the last 10 years discovered over 40 TCF of gas in the Eastern Mediterranean between Israel and Cyprus, and 40 TCF of gas. It's a lot of gas, and people need to recognize this. We, together with Noble, were able to transform the Israeli economy from a fully coal and oil-based economy to today 60% natural gas economy, and this is going to grow to 85 and 90% in the early years of the next decade. And the challenges are, as I said, 10 years, and we still been able now to monetize only one field. The challenges are always relate to the ability to develop infrastructure, monetization. Unlike oil, which is a freely traded commodity, in natural gas, you have to have a plan to sell it and to monetize it. You can't just put it on a boat and send it somewhere. So the challenges are around infrastructure. I think that, call it in the last 12 to 18 months, stars are beginning to align. First of all, we're seeing a recovery in the energy market, or maybe not recovery, stabilization, right? So we're, if 2 years ago or 3 years ago we're sitting here and the price of oil, which is also determines the price of natural gas in many cases, was in the 40s and 50s, now we're back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and we've been there for the last 8, 12 months, and it seems like things are stabilizing. We're seeing geopolitical relationships strengthening as well. Just yesterday I came back from London, where we announced, I think, really a breakthrough transaction between us, Noble, Delek, and really the Egyptian government on infrastructure, real existing infrastructure that would allow us in no time, in a matter of months, to deliver gas from Israel to Egypt. And if people are familiar with a little bit of history in this room,
and how
this
can
is
Cyprus
historic. This is historic. And this will affect, the way we look at this, we don't look at this as Cyprus, Egypt, Israel. We take a more regional approach in serving the markets. So for us, Israel and Cyprus, and sharing and cooperating on this infrastructure is both the more commercial, economic way of doing this, but also in a, let's call it a challenging geopolitical region, also a very strong and stabilizing force.
And let me just say, with respect to what we are doing here, is really revitalizing old infrastructure with the LNG plants in Egypt and the pipeline, and solving the political and financial issues, and then using them. Now, that is, while in some ways very difficult, doing new infrastructure will require much more capital, and also will have its own geopolitical problems.
Yep. Thank you both. Varnava, what is your opinion on the growth prospects and opportunities of the oil and gas sector in Cyprus?
Again, you are asking me to predict the future, but I will give it a go. I believe Cyprus' exploration activities have been limited up until now. We had a discovery in 2011 in Aphrodite. We had earlier this year an announcement that Calypso, as the minister said before, which is great news. But we're talking about frontier exploration in Cyprus, deep water frontier exploration. And globally, we are more often, should I say, disappointed that successful in finding something that we can commercialize it, being quantities or being infrastructure. It doesn't stop us from investing in exploration, in frontier exploration. And if we, and other companies that they are exploring Cyprus find adequate quantities, I think the prospects for Cyprus are bright. As I said before, Cyprus is very well positioned to provide Europe with European gas, which could be very welcomed.
Yeah, and if I continue with you, Varnavas, what in your opinion are the commercialization options for Cyprus gas? How feasible is an NLG plant in Cyprus or the EastMed pipeline under the current market conditions?
The Minister mentioned before a number of commercialization options. I will repeat some of them. It can be piped to Egypt. It can be piped to Europe. It can be brought to Cyprus and processed through an LNG plant, and then it can be sent to a number of markets. Could be Europe, could be Asia, under some circumstances. It could be processed through floating LNG as well. And so there are a number of options, and doesn't mean that one option is exclusive of another option. It could be 2 or 3 ways to commercialize Cyprus gas. Looking at the options and if the quantities really justify it, probably an LNG plant in Cyprus could provide further flexibility and more direct impact and benefit to the economy. As a rule of thumb, international rule of thumb, if you process the gas through an LNG plant on the host country versus piping it directly, the impact on GDP is 3 times as much as piping it directly. So LNG, provided quantities justified, and we don't have those quantities yet discovered in Cyprus, would be our preference. But it's good to have all kinds of options, and then we discuss with the government those considerations and take the right decision when the time comes.
Thank you, Varnava. Perhaps, Ed, you would like to add something on the options available to Cyprus for exporting gas?
I think flexibility is very important in this and looking at all the options and developing them. As Yaniv knows very well, early on we had a prospective partner as we were developing the gas off Israel. To LNG was absolutely logical. Prices were high, you're talking $10, $15 per MCF delivered to Europe or Asia. And then we discovered there's really very good markets right there, besides Israel and Egypt and in Jordan that could be developed. And meanwhile, LNG prices dropped in half. It became a much more liquid market. So you need to look at all options, and before you make a huge capital investment, you have to know where it's going to be in the future, which makes it very risky. So you need that flexibility, you need the intellectual capital, a point that the energy minister made at the end. You need that intellectual capital to understand those alternatives and be flexible in developing them, and the right size. We downsized the Leviathan project, and we found it was very compact in a way which can grow, but we had to adjust quickly to make that capital investment work for us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ed. Moving to Yaniv. Cyprus, Israel, and Greece recently agreed on the construction of the EastMed pipeline. Considering the current challenges as you described them earlier on, and the geopolitical conditions, do you think the construction of such a pipeline is still feasible?
Stavros, we said you're not going to ask me any more difficult questions, right? So I'm in the business of selling gas. So if someone comes with a pipeline to me and says, would you be willing to push your gas through my pipeline, and I get the price that I need to get for my gas, be it in Greece, Italy, or China, I really don't care. I think that looking at the resource base that we have right now in the region, and I wish everyone success in their exploration, and maybe we'll have more gas soon, but the resource base we have right now I think we have better monetization options currently than embarking on a very difficult, both technically and commercially, solution. I understand the political impact that it has, and I think it's definitely an important thing to keep thinking about. And as the minister mentioned, the European Commission is funding, and this is not small money. We're talking 30, 40 million euros for the next couple of years, a feasibility study to see if this makes sense. But at least from our internal work, I think right now this is a bit, far-fetched. However, looking out to the middle of the next decade in Europe, Ravanas mentioned, the decline in European production, in the North Sea, especially, 2025 to 2030. This could be a solution. Competition to Russian gas dominating Europe, this could be a solution. I think that when we're looking at what we have on our plate right now and the demand in our region, which is a real demand, which is driven by economic fundamentals. Right now there are better solutions than moving forward with this project. This is not to say that 5, 6, 7 years from now, provided we have more gas, this could definitely be something that we can look at. I think right now this is not the top, at least not of our priorities. But the role that the governments and the European Commission is taking in pushing this forward, in general, as long as they're paying for it, it's a great idea.
Thank you, Yaniv. Moving to Varnavas. Varnava, how has it been for a global multinational operating in Cyprus relative to other parts of the world, in relation, of course, to your sector?
We operate, you are right, we are a global multinational. We operate in 6 continents and 100 countries, but we're not new to Cyprus. We've been in Cyprus for more than 60 years now. We operated under the Esso brand and then under the Mobil brand, and after the merger under ExxonMobil in downstream. We have moved into the upstream sector a couple of years ago when we started the tendering process actually for Block 10. And moving into an exploration sector in a new market, we start always from the geology. If the geology is there, then we start looking at other things. And the first thing we look at is the investment climate. If the climate is transparent, stable, and predictable for the longer term. Because in the exploration, it takes us 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years exploring. Then if we are successful, we spend 5 to 10 years to develop a project. And then we spend a number of decades producing and monetizing. And the investment in developing a project is huge. We're talking, especially in the form of an LNG plant, we're talking about 12, 13, 14, 15 billion of an investment that keeps creeping up during the lifespan of production. So we are always looking for transparency and stability. In addition to that, what we are looking at, the ingredients of developing a good relationship, a lasting relationship, a fair relationship, based on mutual respect with the resource owner. Resource owner is the state, and the government is representing the state, the country, as the host government with us. So we are looking for a government which is pro-business, which is fair and transparent. And we don't always have that transparency or that predictability across the world. We don't have it across Europe, and we don't have it across the European Union, not always. Cyprus has been a very, very positive example of that. Here is a country with a very well-defined legal framework, very robust tax regime, stable and favorable to business. In addition to that, the government has been proactive in discussing with us both tactics, strategy, sorting out any issues we were having initially when we entered the market, and being always there to iron out any problems and help us on a win-win situation, win-win fashion, to get things moving forward. So very positive experience as far as our exploration activities are concerned. If I have time, I can give a couple of examples.
Thank you for the bright colors you are describing. However, I'm sure there are some areas that we still need to improve in order to take Cyprus a level higher. What would these points be in your opinion?
You're asking me?
Yeah, yes.
I could think of two, maybe. I think the minister mentioned one of the two. It's always, I was very happy to see that chart in the minister's presentation about expanding ports facilities. We do have good port infrastructure today, but with additional exploration activities and if we get into the development phase, that may not be enough. So the port at Vassilikou could be the way out. Maybe another potential improvement, which is happening today in an informal way, but if we could put some more structure into it, is to make a one-stop shop. Today, the Ministry of Energy is acting as one-stop shop. If we have an issue, we go to the ministry or to the minister himself to sort out the issues. And that works very well informally. If we can put some more structure around that, that will be better for the future.
Thank you, Varnavas. Yaniv, would you like to add to that? Basically, if you can focus on the existing port facilities and whether we need to take any other steps or measures.
I think, if I spoke about the port facilities, and obviously, if you're looking at multiple developments in parallel, you would need to expand that infrastructure to allow for that development to move forward. I think it's, and I've been involved with this project since its inception now for over 7 years, and I'd mentioned that we've been through a lot of thinking. One thing I can say, which is a very positive about our interface, and this is obviously a highly regulated business, and we interface with the government basically on a daily basis. And I think what we're experiencing all along is openness and transparency and open discussion. And the idea is to exchange views and ideas, even if we disagree in many cases. We have an open discussion, which I believe contributes to the overall project. As I said, we've had, and I don't know how to predict the future. I failed miserably in the past, so I'm not going to try and do it again. But I am optimistic. We're in the business of being optimistic. Otherwise, you can't explain why a sane person would drill a hole in the bottom of the sea at 5,000 feet, and spend $150 million to do it. So you got to have faith and optimism. It's always about the ability to and sometimes where we are understanding how governments work as well. For a business enterprise, it's sometimes frustrating, to see processes that take time, where you say, well, if I did this in my shop, this would take, 24 hours. So it's important to take decisions. We're on the right tracks, and as I said, I believe we have a very strong partner with the government of Cyprus, and I believe this will lead us for a successful project very, very soon.
Thank you, Yaniv.
Let me just add to that.
Please
as a lawyer, legal stability backed by political stability is absolutely crucial to attract the kind of investment, large investments that you need. You would think it exists here in the United States, but if you go to Colorado, where Noble has a major investment, there's a referendum at the moment that would eliminate 2/3 of the oil and gas industry in Colorado. Now, so it's not. This is not just. You think the United States or a state would be more stable, but there are lots of issues out there. And if a country presents itself as having a good legal framework, and a good stable political backdrop to it, that's the country that's going to attract investments. On the other hand, a company that's involved, like Noble, even though we're still developing Aphrodite, we are now on the ground. I know we're involved in Makarios Hospital with a children's wing to it. We're investing in getting part of the social fabric of Cyprus. We have to contribute as a company to that as part of the deal to show that we are just not taking the natural resource and selling it, but we are going to be long-term investors in the community.
Thank you, Ed. Perhaps a final question from me before I open the discussion to the floor regarding the option mentioned by the minister on the FLNG. Yaniv, can I please have your opinion on that?
Sure.
I mean, could this open the door for exporting gas?
I believe Varnavas is an expert on the matter as well. But we've been looking at FLNG. We believe it's a very good solution for the Eastern Mediterranean, looking at parameters there. We were actively working on a FLNG solution for our project in Israel, and with what happened in the commodities world, we kind of put it on the side for the time being. I think it's definitely the time to start taking a second look at this option. Again, it's being at the forefront of technology, but when you think about where this could be applied, maybe in the most in the close to perfect way, it's really in the Eastern Mediterranean. We have the great atmosphere to put this type of projects in place.
Yes, thank you, Yaniv. I know you have a very important meeting to go to, so we may excuse you if you want. I would like to open the discussion to the floor. We still have a couple of minutes and ask whether there are any questions. The gentleman over there.
I just have a question regarding more of a geopolitical question regarding nobody made a comment on how Turkey or Russia can be an influencer as to what's going on, or a disruptor on what's going on, with the whole energy exploration. Can anybody in the panel just make a comment on that?
Ed, would you like to comment on this?
Well, Russia, as was said early on in this discussion, Russia would very much like to monopolize the delivery of natural gas to Europe. Turkey would very much like to be a recipient of this gas that's being developed in the Eastern Mediterranean. But as Yaniv said, it's not for the producers of natural gas to build the pipeline. It is up to the people who want to receive the gas to make the investment in it. And frankly, from that pipeline from Cyprus to Turkey covers some very difficult subterranean issues, subsea issues. So while there's interest in it in Turkey, and there's also, frankly, every once in a while, Turkey will send and they're getting to be increasingly effective military vessels to just threaten what's going on in the development of gas. And that's, Turkey does that every once in a while to show their interests. And meanwhile, on the land, you've got Turkey, Russia, and Israel, all entangled in Syria at this point. How all that works out, I don't know, but it will impact whether or not there would be a pipeline carrying the gas to Turkey.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the floor? If not, I would like to ask for a concluding statement or remark, starting with Varnavas.
No, just say that we're happy to be in Cyprus. We are going ahead with our plans to drill 2 exploration wells starting in the 4th quarter of this year. That will span next year as well, and look forward to the results.
Thank you, Varnavas. Ed?
I would just want to emphasize again for the amount of capital that needs to be invested here. You do need to have a very stable environment politically and legally. And you need to have the intellectual capital to be there to help, not just with respect to getting the gas out of the ground, which is quite an effort intellectually and technologically, but also with respect to what do you do with it after you get it out? What are the capital costs of it? How does it fit into the legal and infrastructure and some view of the world markets and where the price of LNG would go, as opposed to using a pipeline. You need to have that a stable political environment and the intellectual capital in that environment in order to attract the capital that's needed for this kind of very large development to bring the gas out of the ground and effectively deliver it in a way that companies would like to invest.
Thank you, Ed. And with that, we've reached the end of this session. I would like to thank all the panelists for their interesting and insightful remarks and contribution to the discussion, and wish them future success in their endeavors. Thank you very much.